This video is brought to you by Private Internet Access. Just a few weeks ago, at the end of my review for the new Mean Girls movie, I mentioned how 2024 could only go uphill from there. And here we are with Madam Web. I've been excited for Madam Web since the iconic trailer dropped where we were blessed with the line, "He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died." A line that, I hate to break the news, is not even in the movie, but it's okay because there are at least a dozen other lines that are even crazier than that one. Before I get too excited, let me just come right out and say, I think this might be the worst movie I've seen since Noah Centineo's Swiped. That is saying a lot. So let's unpack that. Let's unpack Madam Web. Madam Web is the latest entry into the Sony cinematic universe. It tells the story of a New York City paramedic named Cassandra Webb and what happens when she starts seeing glimpses of the future. It's literally just That's So Raven. It's just shitty That's So Raven, basically. And it stars Dakota Johnson, so let's start there. You see, I can't get a read on Dakota Johnson as an actor, or as a person, really. I can never tell how serious she's being, both on and off screen. Whatever it is that she's doing, I love it. It's hilarious to me. And whoever's idea it was to cast her as a lead in a superhero film, even more hilarious. Because her whole thing, to me at least, is this dry, kind of nonchalant delivery. Nothing is serious to her, but nothing's a joke either. A kind of acting style that immediately feels wildly out of place the second she shows up in this film. You can actually almost see Adam Scott slowly start to act more like her the deeper into the film you get, and I can't blame him because how the hell are you supposed to do these scenes with someone delivering lines like that? By being on this wavelength, for a film on a completely separate wavelength, she kind of turns this movie into something I've never really seen before. I can't categorize this as a superhero movie. It feels like something more bizarre than that. The worst performance here by far is Tahar Rahim as Ezekiel Sims. I don't doubt he's a great actor outside of this, but they did something with him here that is inexcusable. Something was off. It sounded like ADR, which is fine. That happens. It is some of the worst ADR I've heard in recent years, which is crazy to see from such a massive studio, but moving on. What really confused me was the fact that it wasn't just that first scene that seemed like it was an ADR. It was every single scene of his. Literally, I counted at one point. I want to say there were maybe 3 lines of his that felt somewhat normal. There were even scenes in the back half where he was walking around and his mouth wasn't moving, but he was talking. Did they just not get any takes of him speaking? Was the audio that messed up for an $80 million movie? Maybe I zoned out and there's a reason why he sounds like this, or why his mouth doesn't move, but Jesus Christ. Once you notice it, it makes every scene of his hilarious. It looked kind of sketchy, but not as sketchy as prying eyes of hackers, internet service providers, and others that can view your personal data, which is why I want to thank this week's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads. They never record or store any user data, and their no-logs policy has been proven multiple times in court and by a third-party audit in Deloitte. What is a VPN? Great question. It's a virtual private network, which is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. That way it shields your digital life from the eyes of those that are looking to exploit your private information. But the best part is that it comes with loads of entertainment benefits because of this. Private Internet Access allows you to change your geolocation, which is how you can watch geo-restricted content. Like right now, you can connect to Canada, even if you aren't there, and you can watch The Eternal Daughter by Joanna Hogg on Netflix, one of my favorite movies of last year. That's my personal favorite part about the service. It's super easy to switch. It works incredibly fast. And because of that, I'm able to watch so many movies and shows that I didn't know I was able to watch before. The VPN works with all major streaming services so that you can access more content than ever before from anywhere in the world. Watching Netflix without private internet access is like paying for the best seat at the cinema, but then they make you sit in the hallway. It's exactly the same with Netflix. They have a huge catalog, but you can only watch a fraction of that based on your location. Unless you have private internet access, which allows you to make the most out of your subscription and watch a ton of great movies. The VPN is also available for all platforms: Windows, Mac, Android, Linux, iOS, and many more. And you can use one private internet access subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. Signing up for private internet access is risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is available. All that said, by clicking my link in the description, you can get 83% off on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely free. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into the video. The performances are just the tip of the iceberg here. Again, how much can we really blame the actors here when the lines they have to read are some of the strangest lines I've ever heard in a blockbuster? There's a quality to the iconic "He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died" that makes it so ridiculous, and it's the fact that you keep thinking the sentence is going to end, yet it never does. It keeps going, and it keeps getting crazier the longer it goes on. He was in the Amazon with my mom. Already interesting. Researching spiders. Now we're talking. Right before she died, heartbreaking. It's a 3-act structure, really. And like I said, this line isn't even in the film, but that's kind of how the dialogue operates here. It just trails off and feels like it never ends. Even when the dialogue does flow correctly, the lines themselves are just ridiculous. Like, there's a line at one point where Dakota Johnson is feeling kind of lonely and she's going through a box of her belongings and she says to herself, "Hope the spiders were worth it, Mom." I think I'm underselling it, but how can you not laugh a little bit at that line? Just Dakota Johnson alone in a room in what's supposed to be a pretty emotional scene saying, "Hope the spiders were worth it, comma, Mom." My personal favorite that I was laughing about even on the ride home was when Dakota Johnson enters her apartment. She's preoccupied with some document. Her cat meows and she goes, "1 second, cat. Did they not have the time to give the cat a name? Is the cat's name Cat? Do people refer to their pets that way?" Plus, she's delivering it in that Dakota Johnson way that's like, everything about this is normal. There's no urgency to this situation. 1 second, cat. There's a moment where she's seeing a doctor about this whole situation, and the doctor's advice is, and I quote, "Get some rest, watch old movies." Doesn't seem that weird at first, but think about that line for a second. When has a doctor ever just been like, you should specifically watch old movies? Not even you should, it's like a command. She just said, watch old movies. These lines, I'll admit, the more I explain it, maybe it's not that strange on the surface, but when you think about them for a second, when they come into the movie, when you see someone say it in a scene, you start to realize there are not a ton of normal interactions in this movie. And it's amazing. The movie is set in 2003, an aspect they put astonishingly little effort into. For a second, it seems like their only reference is Beyonce. There's like 2 different Beyonce posters, and you have to wonder, is that the only thing they remember from 2003? Anyway, I think we've established that the writing and dialogue here is ridiculous. If I had access to the film and could quote it directly, I'd be going all day. These are just a few examples out of many, many, many lines that I thought were insane. But let's talk about the technical aspects. For an $80 million superhero flick, you'd expect it to at least be sort of a spectacle. Even Venom, which isn't great, was like interesting to look at. I thought Venom himself looked kind of cool, but no, oh no, absolutely not. The big climax of this film is one of the most hideous things I've ever seen. Are they even trying with the green screen anymore? It's more noticeable than it's ever been. It feels like we're going downhill. It's distracting and ugly, and most importantly, disorienting. It's one thing to look hideous, but when I have no fucking clue where we are in the scene, that's a bigger problem. There's no sense of space. The edit is beyond choppy. The amount of digital zooms and pans, it's absurd. It makes it hard to feel invested in anything happening on screen. There's no sense of scale to it, which, is that not why people who are fans of this shit even watch these movies? Isn't that the whole fucking appeal? Actually, no, more importantly, is this even a superhero movie? Sorry, spoiler alert, I guess, but are we really at a point where you don't get to see the main character be a superhero until the final 30 seconds? I know it's the first film and it's mostly to set up a bunch of other movies. It just seems so pointless and backwards and unfulfilling to me. These origin films that were supposed to turn into trilogies and franchises, they used to be special. They used to be the best one. Now they're just pieces to a bigger thing. Why do people like these movies? What's the joy in just constantly watching setups for years so you can eventually scream a little bit in theater for a few seconds? How depressing. What else? It sounds terrible. Maybe this is just my theater, but the mix here is god-awful. There are 2 separate needle drops to early 2000s songs, both of which are mixed so low that it just sounds awkward and unsatisfying. The whole scene with Toxic, the beat of the song is super janky because it's playing over the score of the film on top of all these other action noises. It's like, it's a mess. The camera work, oh man, I almost forgot. Near the beginning of this, they randomly choose to do this like handheld crash zoom style, like you see in The Office or Succession. They do that for the opening action scene for some reason, and they do it for about 10 minutes and then never do it again. It's like a different director entirely. It adds nothing to the scene. If anything, it's distracting, and again, a little disorienting. Guys, I'm serious. This is one of the worst movies I've seen in a very long time. But let's wind down a bit by talking about that. I've seen a handful of bad movies these last few years. Mean Girls, Exorcist Believer, Thor, Jurassic World Dominion. But looking back at it, those were all total slogs to get through. They were boring movies. This, on the other hand, is on another level. This is my favorite kind of bad movie. It's a lot of people's favorite kind of bad movie because it's so bad that it becomes a pretty good time. Every scene in this thing had something new to offer, a new offensively bad choice to wrap my head around. I didn't even get into the whole like table dance thing. Sydney Sweeney and her gang go like stand up on a diner table and dance for some boys, but they're dancing so awkwardly. It's so great. There's a long scene where Dakota Johnson's teaching them how to do CPR, and it goes on for so long. It's weird. The reveal of Madame Web's superpower, which is built up as this huge thing, ends up being the most underwhelming superpower I've ever seen in a film. Just the ghost of her helping out the girls. It was a fascinating 2 hours, and in 15 years, when this gets the midnight screening treatment, you bet your ass I'll be seated. I will happily watch this again. At the end of the day, I was a little bit happy to see that this is where we're at with superhero movies. I know that this side of the genre operates on a different level compared to whatever they got going on at Marvel and DC. But damn, is this hilarious. I never saw Morbius. Is that as bad as this? Because Jesus. I hope this genre is on its way out, because if this is the best they can come up with these days, why even bother? If I took away anything from this experience, it's that New York City is a whole new level of crazy these days. And that's what I have to say. Thanks for watching. Please go watch Madame Web and form your own opinion, and I'll see you in the next one.